But where the markets are today, in comparison to what seems to be going on in reality, it seems like there's a complete disconnect. And then you read about the number of computer algorithms that are actually driving market decisions. The volume of business that's going into the stock exchanges that are actually trades from people like us is such a small percentage, and the amount of money and equity that goes in behind these algorithms that they can actually control stock prices. They're like, I want this price to be this, and they can make it happen.
What scares me now that you're talking about the stock market is ever since we had our Great Recession, the stock market came back and is now doing well.
Oh, you pump in billions of dollars every month of liquid cash.
Yeah.
And the Federal Reserve basically said, we believe in trickle economics, and we believe if we can hedge up the stock market, that money is going to enter, it's going to come to these companies as, money to them so they can reinvest, and it will create jobs for Americans, and it's going to be good for everyone. I mean, they basically said that was going to be their plan after the collapse.
Well, that's the thing. The middle class is still, it's recovered. It's not as bad as it was, but I feel like we're still in a place.
Most middle class Americans aren't participating in the stock market.
That's a good point too.
A lot of them
can't
aren't.
afford to.
Or
Paycheck to paycheck.
Or they're in pensions. Like you mentioned pensions, you're like, oh, is it fair for someone to invest in a pension?
Yeah.
And then get it taken away. But you're basically blindly investing in a program where you don't exactly know where your retirement money's
Well, I
coming
think
from.
that's the point I forgot to make when I was talking earlier, is that rider they tacked on there was moving it from a government-backed base to a market or a Wall Street bank base. So they're privatizing it instead of keeping it in the government, which may be a good thing, but I just don't trust those guys. I'm afraid they're going to gamble it away.
Well, they
and
already
not
are
going to get in trouble.
but they already are gambling in a way. Even though it was privatized and it was hedged by maybe the government was going to back it, they were still investing that money. They were still taking that money and trying to create interest off of it. They're still taking whatever, and they were investing in things. Like right now, apparently a lot of pensions are being invested in subprime car loans. So that's the newest security. God. So you had subprime mortgage loans. Well, now that the mortgage industry is down because properties aren't selling like they used to, now they figured out a way to give people money to buy a new car who can't necessarily afford it, and they securitize that debt, meaning that they chop it up into little bitty pieces. They get a bunch of different people that have a bunch of different loans. They package it together, and they call it a security, and they sell off that debt to people so that it's like, oh, you can buy this and you're going to get X amount, and they usually give it a really good rating, like, oh, a AAA rating, even though the stuff's junk. And that's what's happening now. And I read an article saying a lot of municipality pensions and teacher pensions were investing heavy into subprime auto loans. That's like the new thing. And you think about that. So it's like this blind trust. Like, oh, because they signed up for, because they know they have this pension plan, it's like you have this blind trust that's going to be managed well. Don't you think it's a little bit better to know that you have some skin in the game and you should be watching it closely to see how it's managed? And if the market takes a hit, you want to know who's investing your money and where they're putting your money.
Definitely.
It's kind of so what do you think about FDIC insurance?
I like the idea of it. Is that what you're asking me?
Well, you understand it's basically the insurance that, like, if you have a savings account or whatever, it's back to a certain amount.
Right.
It used to be like
$250,000.
Now it's up to, I think, $250,000, right?
Yeah.
So when you think of a bank, what a bank really is if you're someone who has a savings account, you're giving them that money. They're taking that money. It's not like they just keep all of your money and just have it saved. No, they take your money and they use that as leverage, collateral, to make loans to other people, right? And they have to keep so much money, cash, on their books to back so much debt that they issue. Right? So at one point in time, people actually really paid attention to the banks in which they gave their money to. This is going back to kind of the stock market or pensions, where you're like giving your money to someone, you're going, hopefully they're managing it well. Compared to like if you're in the private market and you have a 401k and you're like putting your money in different things, you're seeing how things are where the market's going, and you have ownership of it. Well, what that insurance I really think has done is it's made it so people really don't know. Do you know where you have a savings account? Do you know where your bank invests that money? Do you know what kind of loans they give out? Do you have any idea at all?
I don't have that much in savings, so I don't care, but I wouldn't know anyway.
Well, not to say you don't, but like most people have no idea.
No,
because
I
most
agree.
Americans have less than $250,000 in a savings account.
That was kind of the point I was trying to make. I'm just saying, like, where I come from, and a lot of people in my sector of economic scale and society, it's like, yeah, we wish we had savings, but continue. Right. Because you're making a good point. I don't want to digress.
Well, it's not that, but still, let's say you only have $800 in your savings account. Let's say you only have $100 in your savings account. Like, if you really can't risk to lose that money, you think it'd probably be safer to keep it under your mattress than give it to some institution where you don't even know where they're taking that money. Because a lot of banks, that's what created this problem. Because it was federally backed by the government, they knew it was insured. If they make bad bets and they can't pay these people back, the federal government's going to come and give them a bunch of cash so they can pay those people back. And because of the convenience of banking, they're not just going to take all that money out. They'll probably keep it there again, which is what kind of happened. So because we keep increasing that insurance, it's basically people no longer care what the banks are doing with their money that they're giving them. Like, wouldn't it make more sense for people to really be paying attention to what banks are doing with that money and scrutinize it a little bit more and be like, all right, this bank is giving me a lower interest rate, but they have really sound investments. They are really managing it well, so my risk of losing this money is very low. And the risk is all on me. The federal government's not just going to bail it out, but like, this is sound banking. Compared to like, what's happening where it's like, oh, they have the best, people are like, oh, they have the best return. And it's like, yeah, that's because they're making the riskiest gambles they can with your money. But, oh, there's no risk to you because the federal government's just going to bail it out. Wouldn't it make more sense if the risk is still there so the banks behave more reasonably and fiscally responsible? Because the fact that they're backed, then if you had someone telling you, like, Derrick, you can go take $100,000 and do whatever the fuck you want, and if you fuck up, I'll give you another $100,000 because we can't afford you to lose that money. What the fuck would you do? Would you do the safe thing that's going to offer you a 1% return, or would you do the really risky thing that offers you a 10% return, knowing that either way you're going to get that $100,000 back? What would you do? As a business, knowing that there's other business competing against you, they're trying to do the same thing, and if they can get those bigger and bigger returns, they can fucking crush you, because that's what we're doing.
Right.
So it sounds good. Sorry, I'm like...
But you gotta make certain things illegal then. When you're giving that person that option, you gotta be like, all right, this is a situation, but this is only the situation if you don't do these terrible things.
You would hope so, but those banks are coming out with new products and new security so quickly that they're the ones educating the same regulators that are supposed to be monitoring them and telling them don't do bad things. They're telling them like, hey, this product does this, this, and this is why you should allow it, and this is why it's so good because it's going to create this much of a return. It's going to create this economy of scale and blah, blah, blah.
There is a practice of being one step ahead of the written law because it takes a long time to get the laws passed and the regulations passed. And those guys make their money off of staying ahead of that game. Like, what happened in 2008 wasn't illegal. That's why nobody went to jail, even though we all think they should have gone to jail.
Oh, no, I think a lot of what they did was illegal.